never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi guys, welcome back to my Steps to Sobriety, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stephan. The statistics don't lie. 1/3 of us are chemically addicted. So, for those of you out there who still have sort of the notion that, they are just sick, they're lazy, they are just, why don't they just stop using, drinking, whatever we are doing to actually stop the pain? You already get the idea. If 1/3 of the population would be absolute just social failures, doesn't speak much about our society. Now I've got Andrea Hanson with me here, and we both believe that first of all, we can make this world a better place, one interview at a time. So therefore we spend our time here with you guys. And it is a privilege for me to speak to Andrea because she has worked for years and years with people to actually explore what lies underneath our addictions, what actually drives us. And so therefore, for me, it's today a little bit preaching to the choir, but I would love to hear Andrea's take on things. So guys, rest assured, you're not crazy, and it's okay to not be okay. And we're going to explore that today. So Andrea, welcome to my show.
Thank you, Stephan. It's so great to be here. And I 100% agree with what you are saying. People who are struggling with addiction are not crazy. They do have things going on neurologically deep down in the brain that are creating these symptoms. It's not anything to do with laziness or lacking morals or just not being a good person or being a criminal. That kind of rhetoric is maddening. It's infuriating when you know the reality and when you have, walked this path of sobriety with so many amazing people.
And it is crazy. The neurobiology, and we are only just starting to understand that the brain is still a black box, but from a variety of disciplines, we're starting to sort of hammer away on the outside of this black box and get little glimpses inside. And once you actually start putting those glimpses together from the various disciplines, suddenly a picture emerges that actually makes it quite clear that this is the disease to start off with, and that we can actually do things about it. We are not just victims to our genes. We are not just the victims to our environment, although both of them play a role. Yeah, there is so much to it. How did you first start getting into the work with addicts? What drove you, or what was the maybe circumstitious way for you to actually get to where you are now?
It was a bit of a roundabout path. My dad is an addiction specialized psychiatrist and also went to treatment for addiction. So that was kind of an interesting dichotomy that is often not right. Yeah, and it's interesting how much flack he got, and even still there are media outlets that show up to treatment centers that he opens and try to hound him about his addiction, as if being an addiction psychiatrist, he doesn't himself believe in recovery as well. It's really so interesting. But all of that happened. He was arrested, he went to jail, he went to treatment when I was in elementary school. And back at that time, all of the things that I heard from everyone around me was that addiction is a choice. He needs to not choose this anymore. And then I grew up. I went to graduate school. I was still within that mindset with both addiction and complex trauma. And those are my two specialties, really the complex trauma, which is underneath addiction, but we'll talk about that later. And so I was really not as interested in that during graduate school because I was still in that culture and in that mindset of, people need to grow up and get over stuff, which was just silly because I had my own complex trauma as well. But I thought, hey, I'm a functioning adult. I'm pushing through. I'm strong. I'm not controlled by my trauma. But my first
Bullshit.
bullshit, exactly. I know. Yeah, it says, all of the symptoms that I was shoving down as hard as I possibly could so that I could go through graduate school. But so I went to my first internship at a methadone clinic, and it was kind of an accident that I ended up there. I was supposed to be working with kids at a private practice, but I ended up at a methadone clinic instead.
That would
And
be the polar opposites of your
they really
internments that you
are.
could be.
I
Crikey.
know.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a lot. You go into a methadone clinic, and first off, you're starting at 5 a.m. in the morning seeing clients. And you start off with a caseload of 50. So it's really baptism by fire into mental health. And I just very quickly fell in love with the clients. They were so many of the most incredible, strongest, most resilient people I had ever met. And immediately, I mean, within 2 or 3 weeks, I knew that I wanted to work within addiction.
And you're quite right. There is a transformation that happens when you look at addiction. Well, there are many transformations, but those addicts who seek treatment, who move away from the kind of victim role towards the survivor, and then later towards a thriver role. These are the most incredible people, and they wear all shades of skin, all varieties of genders. You can't actually label it, because alcohol and chemical drugs are ways of us to escape our reality. And often enough, the complex trauma lies underneath there. When we say complex trauma, what do we actually mean? What is
That's
your
a really good
definition of that?
question.
Yeah.
Such a good question, and it's so complicated. There is PTSD, which is still really terrible, yet a bit more cut and dry as far as the symptoms, the having nightmares, the avoiding, the hypervigilance, all of that. Whereas complex trauma is, as it says, more complicated. With complex trauma, it is events that happen throughout development that impact the development and the developmental course of your brain, all the way from the brainstem up to the top. So what happens with complex trauma, and there's decades of research about this. There's the ACE research. Dr. Bessel Blander Kolk has done tons of research. There's a lot of different great psychiatrists and psychologists that have done research on this. But what has been shown is that these developmental interruptions, essentially, that can even be in utero or at adoption, they disrupt the brain, they overwhelm the brain's ability to cope, and then we go off on these tangents, essentially, which later on in life can look like addiction, inflammatory diseases, not being able to control your weight, any number of the diagnoses in the DSM, like ADHD, anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline personality disorder. All of those things can stem from the brain's development going off course from being disrupted in childhood.
Oh, beautiful definition. Love it. Love it.
Thank
Love it.
you.
I think I want to say two things to that: the PTSD versus complex PTSD. Some people nowadays do no longer talk about PTSD, and drop the D, PTS. The reason for that is probably quite wise, because certainly PTSD, if there's one group that really can take the ownership of that, these are the soldiers that are returning from deployments. These are the law enforcement officers that see awful thing, the frontline medical personnel, those kind of people who are exposed to some very, very, very nasty things. A lot of people like that, they are very powerful in their mind. They are very strong people, and they have to be for the roles that they are doing. To then admit that there is a disorder, that there's actually something seriously wrong with them, that might not go well with an employer. That might not go well with their own take on life. So therefore, some groups are dropping the D in PTS. They just call it post-traumatic stress. And I think that is a
Yes.
very good thing. So if you guys hear the difference of that, and you don't, what are they calling it, PTS or PTSD? That's what it's about. Actually breaking down the barriers to strong
Yeah.
people having to be strong men or strong women. Strong women? No, I don't know. I don't know how that strong woman sounds like. So you can't, if you take that shit out, break that barrier down, just in the hope that maybe some people are accepting it, accepting that there is help out there and maybe begin a journey. That would be
Yes.
beautiful.
And even from the clinician perspective, dropping the D makes sense because is it a disorder if it makes perfect sense that your
Ooh,
brain did that with what you
nice,
went through
nice.
and you adapted, you mitigated in order to
Exactly.
survive horrific experiences? And how is that a disorder?
Touche. If at all, you could say it's pure survival. Therefore, it's actually adaptation to your
Mhm.
environment, however horrible that environment is. Now, okay,
Exactly.
if you are basically if the trees around you are covered in the guts of your friend, okay, on the battlefield, yeah, we accept that hurts. Um,
Mhm.
if you see your own bones sticking out after a horrific accident in your motor car, okay, then you accept that. The problem is there's so many scars that are in us that you can't see, at least not on the outside. And I guess that is where then the complex PTSD or PTS comes in. And I think that is what so many people don't understand. You don't have to see the most horrific things. And this is not a pissing contest. Oh, my trauma is bigger than yours. Ha. It doesn't work like that. Do you have
No, not at all.
problems? Do you see clients who face that kind of imposter syndrome? How
Mhm.
can I have trauma? And this, I had a good childhood. And you actually look about it and you think, yeah, right.
All the time.
Hmm.
All the time. And it's so interesting that we do that. We compare the negative, but we don't the positive. We don't say, well, I'm having a pretty good day, but I
Oh,
guess I can't say I'm having a good day because someone's having a better day.
oh yes, oh yes, I like it.
It's very silly.
And there, of course, we have bombarded in social advertisements and social the own social hell that we are creating called social media, where you always have to be just a perfect person. So if that is perfect, and if that perfect you see as normal, hell,
Mhm.
I will never reach that Coca-Cola saccharine type advertisement style of life, and I
No,
don't want to. So
so true.
but here we are. We are just sort of at a moment. I'm trying to set the scene for you guys out there, because ultimately it can be quite confusing when you never really delve down into the description and what are we really talking about.
Yeah,
So
it's interesting. So many of my clients who come to see me, they feel like they have complex trauma, but they can't even put a finger on what it is. That's really common.
isn't it?
And often in treating the complex trauma, we never do. We never put a finger on exactly what it was, but there's this knowledge, this inner knowing of there's something that feels like it's very wrong with me. And I often feel like I'm crazy and I'm just sabotaging myself and I'm stuck in this life that I don't want to be stuck in and nothing's helping, but then the complex trauma work does.
Interesting. So
Mhm.
what is an approach towards such a person? And I guess we go one step further. So we have got, let's say, a person in their 40s who has typically achieved quite a lot. Um, they are maybe mums to um, some beautiful children. They have gone back to work. They're doing everything. They're fulfilling every single role that there could be in their society, and yet they feel like strangers within their skin.
Mm.
Same with men, and I see it so often around me. Um, we often then try to escape, and we often then try to do things that are not so nice. Maybe the drinking, because mummy wine culture. Yeah, thank you. I'll take some of that. See, oh man, I need at least half a bottle before I can pick up the kids from school. All that stress, and after all, I deserve it. Okay,
Yeah, or
so
I'm a better mom when I do, right? I'm
ooh,
less agitated, I'm less irritated. I'm willing to sit on the floor and play Legos with my kids all evening long because I've had my half bottle of wine.
very nice, very nice. How do you address something like that? It's not yet blatantly alcoholic in the gutter, where this person actually
Mhm.
knows that something is seriously wrong. But this person is still actually in a functioning role, actually very well functioning in their own funny old way.
Yeah, there's functioning and then there's whole. And oftentimes, when we're functioning, we're living out in front of our bodies, high achievers, living out kind of in front of your bodies. And you often feel a tension in the facial muscles as well, as there's so much pressure towards the front of the body and the front of the face to move forward, to achieve, to do. There's a lot of putting pieces of puzzles together in the brain. And essentially what it is a partial dissociation into the executive functioning regions of the brain, to where if I can go about my day, if I can have goals, if I can do all of these things, and if I can look so good on paper, then all of the distress that's going on deeper down, this tidal wave that might take me over at any moment, as long as I can shove it deep, deep down, I'm okay.
You've just described me to a T.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And it is so, and yeah, I think you described pretty much 80, 90, close to 100% of the people I work with.
Mhm.
Who are you? Oh, well, I'm a software engineer. I'm a doctor. I'm Stephan Neff. I'm a pain physician. That was
Mhm.
for a long time the only thing I could say. And then when a caseworker, when my caseworker actually told me, no, Stephan, who are you? I said, I just told you, I am a pain specialist. And so we take on these labels, and labels that we have fought long and hard for. Let's not be wrong here. These are very powerful things with which we identify, but these are still labels. These are roles that we take on. These are masks that we put up. Most of us in the 30s, 40s, 50s have forgotten who we really are. How the hell do you finally take such a mask off? What is the work that you possibly could do to actually help such a person exploring the beautiful, broken mess that is hiding underneath all these beautiful masks?
There's so many different ways to go about it, and part of it depends on where they're at. If do they want to feel more whole, do they want a different life,
Mm.
and if they do, that of course, as we all know, makes it a lot easier. You don't have to start with the motivational interviewing, but when someone is really ready, what it comes down to is healing those lower regions of the brain. They've been partially dissociating into logic already. So if you try to sit there and wrestle with the logic center of their brain, oftentimes they already know. They know, they've got it, they figured it out, they can do the puzzle. But when it comes to actually connecting to themselves, that's terrifying. So we have to build up that sense of safety and trust within the body and that connection to the body. And all of that happens much deeper in the brain, where we're not talking so much anymore. We're breathing, we're moving, we're introducing somatics and bilateral stimulations, and sometimes even psychedelics.
Oh, talk about using fire to fight fire.
Yes, exactly. It seems really weird. It seems weird. And yet, are you familiar with the MAPS research?
No, but please show me, tell me.
Yes, so MAPS research has been going on for a couple of decades, and they're working towards FDA approval of psychedelics. Right now, they're working towards MDMA, and then right after that will be psilocybin for treating trauma and PTSD. They've been doing tons and tons of live trials over the last couple of years throughout the world, and they have been going really well. And what they found, and also with appropriate treatment using ketamine, not just one of those clinics where you go in, they give you drugs, you leave, that's not appropriate, but appropriate treatment using ketamine, that it can help incredibly with healing addiction. But like any medication, it has to be treated very seriously and within a larger therapeutic context. I never want to give the impression that anyone can go buy drugs off the street and use them and then be healed. That's just not how it works. But blended into internal family systems work, EMDR work, somatics, breath work, movement work, all of that stuff in a larger process, the psychedelics have been found to really be able to, one, reduce the fear of connecting to that really deep down injured part of the self that has gone through just so much, and be able to increase neuroplasticity so that the therapeutic process that's happening during the essentially the trip is really incredible and much more potent.
And there are so many examples from nature, or from other disciplines / walks of life, where we are doing very similar things in order to actually stimulate the endogenous. So those systems that are within us, that have got similar substances that our bodies can release. So let that be really deep meditation. Let that be religious mantras or prayers. Let that be going into a spiritual retreat with an indigenous tribe somewhere. Many of these avenues where we seek enlightenment, or however you wish to call it, we are trying to actually trigger those natural impulses to come out. So it makes sense that actually, as part of such a beautiful journey, that we also use maybe certain I don't want to call them drugs, certain compounds that can help us to be catalysts in our recovery journey. But I love it how you said it. You don't just go out on the street and say, "Yeah, see, I heard sort of some of these mushrooms are good for my PTSD. Let's see which mushrooms I can get on the street." No, don't try that at home, kids. Okay, that is no.
Yeah, I've even heard of mushroom experiences and ketamine experiences that have caused post-traumatic stress.
Of course.
That can go very poorly. So definitely not recommending to do it.
And guys, when you hear these stories, don't just hook into the ketamine or hook into a new tablet that is out there. That tablet is maybe facilitating something, and that is a journey. And that is a journey that you can't take a shortcut. Okay, you don't just go from here to way over there with the help of 2 tablets. No, it doesn't work like that. So unfortunately, there is some work there. But then again, I always keep saying that trauma happens in layers. So does your healing. So you need to address the outer part of the onion. You need to start cutting somewhere on the onion. And yes, there is the first layer, peel it back. And yes, there's some past, there's some not so nice things there. Deal with it. And not in a sense of, oh, just go deal with it. But no, actually explore what the shit has happened to you. Maybe
address it. Exactly.
Maybe start with accepting that something actually has happened to you, and that maybe the little construct that you have created in your head of everything is normal in my life, maybe it's not so normal. Okay, maybe.
And a common barrier too to accepting that is acknowledging that trauma does not mean that you're blaming anybody else for your problems. I've run into that a lot, right? That no, my parents were good people, or no, like they were just struggling too. Yeah, they were. And acknowledging your own trauma is acknowledging how your nervous system reacted to its environment.
Correct.
and other people were part of your environment. And yes, maybe they were struggling with their own trauma or mental health or addiction or whatever they were going through. And that's how their nervous system and their body and brain were responding to their environment. And then yours did in return. As humans, we're all very connected to each other. We're pack animals, and our environment shapes our brain. So other people in our environment have a huge impact on how our brain is shaped, and they can be good, incredible people, and they can have contributed to our brain development in a negative way at the same time.
Beautifully said. And there's another component. Even if you're in your living memory, things were okay-ish. Go back one generation, you would say, so what? No, you're kidding. Come on, that's bullshit. And yes, of course, my parents had a bad life. There's a beautiful study where rats were living their life, and in their cage they put a metal plate that could be electrified, so it gave them a shock. And then the researchers wafted some cherry blossom flavor through the rat cage, and shortly thereafter, if the rats were standing on that plate, they got a shock. So very soon they learned, damn, cherry blossom, that hurts. So whenever there's cherry blossom around, don't forget. So that was mommy and daddy mice. Now, mommy and daddy did what mommy and daddies do, and then a little while later, little mice came out, or little rats came along. Now, the young rats, they did exactly the same. So they basically put them into a similar cage setup. Yet, they didn't start the thing again. They didn't start the whole project again. They just started wafting the cherry blossom flavor through the cage. And these rats tried to get away from the metal because they had learned in their genes, handed down from their parents, that cherry blossom is really not good for you. So there you go. That is the power that negative influences on one generation can actually be handed down to the next generation. How much that genetic information is then decoded and comes out, that has to do with a lot of other facts than the kind of sort of the nurture and the things that happen to us in that life. But you have got a lot of influences that you're not even aware of. But these influences, they will shape you, like it or lump it. And I think the work that we can do nowadays with complex trauma is actually addressing all this multitude of informations that are laid down in response to trauma, maybe starting off with the generations before us, then starting off at times when we can't even verbalize, yet we experience things as trauma. What you were saying, a thing called ACE. What is an ACE? Ace of
Those
spades,
are
ace of hearts, or
adverse childhood experiences is what ACE means.
right. So being whipped, being put into a locker like Harry Potter, or no, what is ACE?
Those are great examples. Pretty rare examples. Well, unfortunately, the children in cages situation is not as rare as we would like it to be. But we'll avoid the politics of all of that. Most often, it's things like having a parent who is neglectful, not always intentionally, but maybe they're depressed, or maybe they are suffering from trauma from addiction, or they are working 3-4 jobs, to try to help the family survive, or having a lot of kind of more systemic attention that is negative, like children who grow up Black or trans or gay experience more of that social trauma and adverse childhood experience, or having parents who are divorced. Even if the divorce is amicable, it is going to shift the way that life goes for you. There's going to be more experiences of loneliness, of isolation. just going to be different with divorced parents. And again, none of this is to say that the parents are bad people. It's just to say that the child going through this needing to develop are now experiencing these situations that are adverse to normal childhood development. And just like you were saying with the generational things, so often when I'm working with clients, I don't necessarily do hypnosis, but it's something very similar to hypnosis where they're accessing more things than they thought that they knew or that they knew logically. And very often what it comes down to is something that grandpa or even great grandpa or great grandma went through that has been traced down through generational patterns. And that can be addiction, that can be so many of our grandparents went to war not so long ago. It was only a couple of generations ago that just so many. And then going through the Great Depression as well, that kind of poverty and not knowing where your next meal is coming from, that shapes not only your genetics, but the way that the next generation interacts with life. And every generation, it seems, typically tries to do better for their kids than they had. And that doesn't mean that it all just disappears, that everybody's fully conscious and fully aware all the time and 100% in control of their emotions and how they react to things and are completely enlightened in their belief system. So even though parents typically try to do better for their kids still suffer the consequences of this trauma that's been dripping down for centuries into us.
Beautiful example there. I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. My mum was a single mum and trying to make the best, working hard. I grew up with my great-grandma. So talk about all the issues there. Great-grandma who had gone through 2 wars. So there was the darkness there. And then I was hell-bent, this will not happen to my children again. So I was abandoned due to circumstances, so to speak. Was I there for my children? No, I was working my guts out in order to provide for my children, to make sure that they have a better life than the life that I had. Was I there for my children? Probably not, because either I was working too hard or then I was drinking too hard because I needed to switch off and I didn't know how to switch off. So there you go. So talk about
a wonderful example.
And it hurts when I'm holding the mirror in front of my face like that, because I now am realizing how true the notion is that I'm a failure. See, again, we're comparing all the negatives about us and the negative voices are coming out so quick. You failure, you bad parent. But this is not what this is about.
And it's important to acknowledge too that yes, you were doing your best for your kids based on the experiences and the life that you had and what you wanted to create for them. You were not a bad person. You are not a bad dad. However, your kids might have consequences. And that's true of all parents. That's true of me as well, with my background and how I've attempted to raise my children. And I've fallen on my face a million times over.
Good.
And I will pay for their therapy.
Yeah, exactly right. And I think that is so important that we realize that is we can only do our best. And some of us are lucky enough and privileged enough to meet the right people, have the right experiences, that we admit that we are not okay and that it's okay not to be okay, and to actually engage in a journey, in a series of interactions with ourselves, with other people that help us to become a better version of ourselves. And I think that is what life is really about. That is what the meaning of life is, that we have got the privilege of choice, the privilege of taking action, and maybe trying to stop for a moment what we're doing, think, is what we are doing really who we really are? Maybe the question should be, who are you, to start off with? Maybe even better, who do you want to be? Who are you? Maybe your brain comes up with a lot of negative things. Fair call. That's the line in the sand, and that's one opinion of your brain. Okay, maybe there are many other opinions there that get pushed down under by that strong voice. Maybe the question is, who do you want to be, and what steps do you need to take in order to become that new person? And in order for that, you need it's time to open the curtains and actually let a bit of sunlight in, and that will expose some of those maybe adverse childhood experiences, maybe some of the decisions that you took that made a lot of sense at that time, maybe some of the decisions that you did last night that made then a lot of sense, and that maybe you regret this morning, and that's cool. That's absolutely cool.
And then maybe they'll keep you up tomorrow night, so you won't have time to do anything wrong.
Yeah. Or you could just decide to stay where you are, because at least that's the devil you know. And at least there is some help in that quart of whiskey or gallon of vodka in my case. But it never seemed to be. And I've checked so many bottles, honestly, man.
The answer is never at the bottom, unfortunately.
I
it
tried.
can feel like it is at the time.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. So where to start? If we say there's so much trauma around, if we now cast our net this wide, hell, this is every day is like walking up Mount Everest. You can't do that. That's a waste of time. You will never achieve that, don't you?
Yeah, but what you're saying is all of that stuff is just so intricately interwoven with, when you say, who are you? And, you were saying earlier, your job, right? Your title. Yes. And then when you try to dig deeper than that, especially when you're struggling with something like addiction recovery, so often where you go to is, I'm a failure, I'm a fuck up, I'm a mess, I'm unworthy, I'm not good enough. And all of these things are so deeply within us. And what I find so often is that those adverse childhood experiences and those really strong insecurities are hand in hand. They came about often at the same time. And that's why they are so strong, because that lower region of your brain, the limbic system, that is the map of the world, the map of ourselves, that develops before the age of 6. For the most part. And when you're in a home where there is neglect or chaos, or when you're in poverty or experiencing a lot of racial trauma, any of those kinds of environments, you start to develop a sense of self that is based around, if I were better, my environment would be better. We take it on ourselves, and it makes sense evolutionarily, because we need our family, we need our community. So we're not going to look at our parents at a very young age and say, wow, these guys are whack, I need to get out of this house. It's just not how it's going to go. We're going to say, okay, if dad's coming home angry every day and he's yelling at me, then what do I need to do? Do I need to be very, very quiet and very, very still? And then our nervous system learns that that's the only way that we're safe. Or do I need to make everything in the house super clean? Or do I need to go hide? Or do I need to, what do I need to be doing? And that's how we mitigate. That's how we adapt. And then that's how we are formed. But the idea then becomes that, I'm not good enough. No matter what I do, I can't fix this situation that keeps happening to me. That becomes who we are. And that's so deep down in the brain that we can say all of the affirmations that we want to say, and it's never going to matter, because it's never going to feel true. But when we look at life, what I often have clients do is write down 100 things that you want from your life, anything. And it's so hard. This is a difficult assignment. A 10 is typically where clients will get to before they're like, I'm tapped out. They write out 100 things that they want from their lives, and then they write out self-betrayals. What are those times that you look back and it just hurts? Either it cringes, or you feel like, hiding or crying because you did something and it did not feel okay. And now let's look at what's behind these two separate lists. And what you find is that their value system is behind the things that they want. They want love. They want adventure. They want connection. They want, success. They want to have an impact on people. They want to do good. And these self-betrayals behind those are these negative core beliefs or these insecurities of, being, this is hurting somebody. This was a time that I betrayed somebody who I loved very dearly. And when you look at those, the feeling behind them shows you who you are. You are these value systems that you feel so good about. You are not these self-betrayals that you feel so crappy about. And yet we live in those feelings that bring about those self-betrayals. And there comes the medication, the self-medication after that to escape feeling that way.
Yep. The meaning of life. If you guys wanted to just stop for a moment, that recording here, either as a podcast or as a YouTube video, just go back for about a minute, listen to that again, what Andrea just said. I think that is the core, because my life just in multiple versions just rushed past me. Zing, zing, zing. Yes, 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 tick, tick, tick. Andrea just basically covered 75% of my life in 1 minute. So if you've got the same feeling out there, then this is okay. This is a breakthrough. This is the first time in your life that you probably really pulled the curtains aside and got some light into those dark and dangerous recesses that are called feelings and emotions and values, and you actually think what drives your behavior, and behavior regardless, good or bad. Wow. But guys, if you're now saying, damn, this is a huge job, again, please may I suggest that don't try to reinvent the fire or the wheel. Maybe now that you understand how important it is to do the work in maybe a systematic fashion, and maybe in a certain way that is most likely for you to succeed in having those breakthroughs, having those things. Don't try to think about these things yourself. Yes, you might be really good as a, I don't know, engineer, mother, nurse, whatever your label is. But when it comes to your own brain, and especially the limbic system, and especially those things, how you behave, trust me, you're nothing more than a chimpanzee sitting on a keyboard and going. So yes, okay. For those of you who are only listening to the podcast, you just missed a Golden Globe-like presentation
really incredible
of me being a
performance.
chimpanzee. So, bottom line is, there is so much out there that we can do, and I think we should start with that. You and I strongly believe that there is hope out there, because you have seen so many people who were in the darkness and came out into the light. I chose that title in my podcast, in my show, on purpose, Into the Light, because I was in the darkness for a very, very long time. And then through a series of events, I came to a point now where I have to say, wow, I'm actually in the light, and I appreciate every single second of it. From now and then, there are dark clouds coming across, and it's getting dark. That's cool, because guess what? Trauma doesn't just stop. It has, especially the last 3 years, were bitches for virtually everyone I met. And that's okay. It is the pressure that we need to grow. If there is no pressure, if there's no negativity, if there's no trauma around us, then we are just nicely complacent and we are just stagnant. So many people, and I subscribe to that as well, embrace trauma. Maybe not at the moment when it happens, but afterwards we say, okay, damn, thank you. I needed that bit of humility that it gave me, the bit of need to grow further. And that is beautiful. That's how we become new and better versions of ourselves.
It is incredible.
Has there been a personal example for you in recent times when you actually felt rather, oh damn, I'm no longer the person helping others, but actually I'm helping myself here right now. There's so many examples in my life, but have you got some?
Oh, all the time. And that everybody is a mirror. So every client that I have in their own way is a mirror for me. And even being in such a deeply incredible healing experience, it's incredibly spiritual and it's really transcending. And so for me, I benefit every single time that I work with a client, and it is an incredibly beautiful process. And what you're describing, it is healing to be able to get to a place in your life where you're no longer run and driven by dopamine and by trying to dissociate and pull yourself out of trauma, and instead being able to be fully embodied and experience these challenges in life and navigate them in a place where you're intentionally bettering yourself. That is going through life from a healed state. And that is an incredible place to be, as opposed to this dopamine war with yourself. And as far as is something to do, right? That's one of the big questions is like, okay, we have this information. Now, what do we do with it? When we act in alignment with our sense of meaning and purpose, with our value system, which again can be extracted from that list of things that you want, we release serotonin, and that calms our system down, and that helps connect us to our entire brain. So instead of being run by these dopamine spikes and these dips down into feeling terrible and then needing that dopamine again and back and forth and back and forth, now we can step into this wholeness where traumatic things happen and we can still choose our life.
And choose. So the 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 statement that you have a choice is so important. You have a choice. You don't have a choice what happens to you, but you have a choice how to respond to that. I was recently betrayed, so to speak, to already use emotional words here, by a institution that owed me money, substantial amounts of money, at a time when I actually needed to pay other debtors, for example, the tax department. And this institution really fucked me about. So I had to take out a loan in order to pay the people who wanted money from me, whilst this institution was dragging its heels, despite me cajoling, asking nicely, bribing, whatever is necessary. And it was just brutal. I had a choice how to respond to it. And in all fairness, I fell back into that victim role. And I hated every second of it. And I was wallowing in my depression. And there was the darkness there, and I felt it, and I tasted it, and it wreaked havoc in my life. And there was the temptation, see, if you just have a drink now, look what they have done to you. You deserve it. Look, because they have done all that to you. Ha, we show them. We drink a whole 2 bottles of wine down in one. Ha, that will show them.
Yeah, that will show them. It's their punishment.
Exactly. So all that happened in my brain, and it was not nice. Having said that, it's now 2 months have passed. I'm slowly coming out the end of this bloody not nice experience, and it was a new trauma. Something really pissed me off. But having said that, about halfway through, I had enough of that victim role, and I started implementing steps of action, or action steps. And it was beautiful, actually taking action. And that was at times as simple as actually getting up and quotation mark making your bed. There's this beautiful talk out there, a TED talk about from an admiral who about the importance of making your bed in the morning. It's basically all about taking action, and you have already taken action. You've succeeded. You've proven to yourself, wow, I've just succeeded in making this bed. So now I succeed in making myself a breakfast. Now I will succeed. And it's all about taking action. And I've implemented that fundamental steps, taking action. And it calmed me down. My anxiety calmed down because I took action. I was no longer a victim. I was now a survivor. And now, finally, I'm becoming the thriver again because that story is behind me. But I've grown from it. It was painful. It was pain in the ass, really, actually. I could have done without that. But here I am. I'm now the thriver. I'm a different man. I'm a better man. And maybe that is how I encourage you all out there to look at the kind of shit show that sometimes we call life. There are still, amongst all those things that happen to us, trauma, negative experience, etc., there is still the choice, the privilege of choice, the privilege of taking action, and the privilege of you controlling those things that you can control. And by doing so, you create a leadership model for the people around you. Your children see mommy's going through a shit time, but they also see Mummy is actually making choices that are different from the past. She's no longer hitting the whole cheesecake. She's only having maybe one fork of the cheesecake. Now that's a start, girl. Okay. So there you go. You start taking action. And that is beautiful. And that is what our power is. And Andrea, you're a woman who is helping others to actually take those steps. And that is so beautiful, and it's such a rewarding job, isn't it? That's why I do these interviews. I have this morning, this hour that I had the privilege of spending with you, of taking action, of getting up out of bed, being and then of course technology fails and more trauma and everything. But here I am. I succeeded actually with getting Andrea here on my show, and she has changed my life already. She has made me realize how grateful I can be for all those insights. And that's beautiful. She changed me as simple as by connecting and discussing and being open about certain traumas, certain things that have happened to us in the past, that are happening to us now, by just reflecting on it. And that was just a talking side that we just did. Andrea hasn't done a single motion kind of thing with me, because there's so much where maybe by using our body, we can actually change our state. That's where some of the yoga and other things comes in. How much does that play a role with you in your care, in your relationships with clients?
Yoga is incredibly important. Body movement. Our bodies are the ultimate witness to everything that happens. Our brain can be distracted, asleep, dissociated, a high, right? It can be gone, but our body is always there experiencing every single trauma that we go through. And our body is the answer to moving through that trauma. There's a specific kind of yoga called TCTSY. It's trauma center, forgetting the other T, but it's a trauma center yoga. And it's really well researched for healing trauma. And what it is very permission based. So instead of telling you what to do with your body, it's asking you if you would like to do it with your body, or suggesting that it could be interesting to try doing this with your body. And you may experience this sensation or you may not, right? So it's very much based on curiosity of getting back in touch and building up those neural pathways to being in touch with your body. And then being able to, even in conversations like this, in conversations with you, Stephan, being able to sit here and make eye contact with you, even though it's virtual, being able to sit here and be part of this conversation and part of touching other people's lives is is incredible, especially from an embodied state. So as I'm sitting here, I'm enjoying feeling what it feels like to sit here and speak with you, and that connection to my body and feeling that lightness in my chest and that warmth in my core area. That is such an incredible, beautiful healing experience when it feels like, especially when we're scrolling social media and seeing all this nonsense, or watching the news, and a lot of states are going through legislative sessions right now. Currently, I'm in Utah, and Utah just, passed some stuff that's going to be really bad for the addict community, um, involving Narcan and stuff like that. And that is sorrowful. And that is, I could get overwhelmed. I could feel really downtrodden about that. And as you're saying, I get up and I do this, and other people will hear this and hopefully feel a sense of hope. And everyone can be part of a conversation with other people that can help drive everything forward.
Exactly. And that is, I think, the key. If you think, wow, this is such a huge topic, where the hell to start? Well, guess what? You need to eat 3 times a day. And maybe we should come back to a very old-fashioned thing called eating together and putting our cell phones down and communicating. And maybe we could just actually bring up such a topic at the dinner table as a family, and actually say, oh, how was your day? And really mean it, and really actually listen, and maybe talk about certain things, and then maybe do something with us together that maybe is, again, not watching television, but hey, guess what? Let's all try to meditate for 2 minutes. What? What? Can you imagine what maybe your parents would say if you're a younger person? If you're 50, okay, take your 70-year-old grandma. Come on, we meditate. What? And maybe, just maybe, you start a revolution. You start a movement that, and I'm making up here with the meditation. It could be something else that you could actually say, wow, I listened to that podcast here today. And maybe something really touched me there. And by you saying that, you open up, you role model how it is to communicate, you role model how it is to listen. All those things that you are so pissed off that your children never do, maybe just role model them and actually see what happens. Guilty as charged.
Yes, me too.
So there you are. There's so many ways that we can actually move forward. And I think that was the power of today's interview, to actually show you that it's not just possible to move on. It's actually inevitable that you will become a better person if you take the right steps. And steps, by definition, means taking action. Steps also, by definition, means you have a choice, and you made the choice to take those steps. And the last thing that steps entail is, yes, you can't just walk on one spot or walk around the place. You also might wish to think, where do I want to walk towards to? So what is your moral compass? What is the direction that you want to take in order to become the best version of yourself? So all those things can come together. And when they do come together, that is when the magic happens. And I think I want to invite you along onto this journey, because both Andrea and me are on that journey. We are just a few steps further ahead on that path compared with you. But we are all on the same path. Maybe our visions towards the end, our dreams, are a bit different, but all in all, we want to be the best versions of ourselves. So I encourage you all to create your own power team. And a power team is a team where you are the dumbest person in the team, okay? And we are so bad. We always want to be the leaders, etc. No, that's not a good team, because yes, you can learn from leadership, but you can learn so much more when you fail, and when maybe there are people who know a little bit more about you. rather than you do about yourself. And there are people like Andrea. So Andrea, if people, if listeners want to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me at my website, andreahanson.net. And then from there is all of my social media links. So you can find me on social media. And I love what you're saying about the power team. And if I have one last message to leave, it's very wise words from a client I once had who said, none of us can see our own butts. We need somebody else to tell us what our butt looks like.
I like it.
And it's okay. That's perfect to admit, to say, I need help. I need somebody to look at my butt for me.
I like that. And to have your back, also put it in a positive way. It's good to have someone in your team who has your back, who can hear what you say, but more importantly, hear what you don't say, see maybe the need for you to explore a direction that you haven't even thought about. And I think that is the key thing to a beautiful, productive relationship with someone who is your mentor, your psychologist, your coach, whatever label you want to give this person, your spiritual guider. I don't care how you call that person, but you need to be clear that there's so much more that you possibly could do to take action, and that it's okay to be not okay. It's not okay to just be quiet about it. There is hope, there is help out there. Andrea, you're a classic example of people out there who are convinced that we can make this world a better place, one interview at a time, one interaction at a time, one smile at a time, one act of gratitude at a time. If we all put that as action steps into our life, we can practice that just as much as you go to the gym and you practice repetitions of lifting a weight. You can do repetitions of gratitude, repetitions of making the people feel good around you without giving away too much from yourself. But a smile goes such a long way. An act of kindness goes such a long way. And there's so much that we can do. So, Andrea, thank you very much for your time, for your honesty, for your insights. You certainly succeeded in making me reflect a lot today on my own journey, more importantly, on who I want to become when I grow up. And I think I'm looking forward to that. However many years I have got, may that be many decades, I can't wait to actually explore the better Persians of myself. Yeah, I've never had a better
Persians
Persian.
are superior.
Yes, I've got a Persian friend who keeps telling me that. No.
Me too.
The better version of myself. I love it. He will not let that down. Oh my God. Anywho, guys, fun aside, go check Andrea out. Her information, all her social media links are down there in the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. Once you're down there, press the like and subscribe button and go out there, tell your friends that we are having these conversations that hopefully can help others to start living a life that's maybe a bit more meaningful, maybe a bit more intentional, maybe full of joy because we've taken actions. And I love that new life. So as soon as I'm logging off here, I'm going out there and think, okay, what can I do today? And that's actually really quite a cool feeling. No longer a victim. No. Thriver. That's cool. Yeah. Andrea, thank you,
Stephan.
Oh no, you're an amazing woman. Thank you so much for coming onto my show. And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with passion. Bye.
Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Trying